So yeah, this EP is basically a pop EP, but I wanted to show that pop music doesn't have to necessarily be uncreative or stick to the same trends that everyone else is doing. So it's heavily influenced by electronic music, dance music, but there's a bit of, I tried to make each track have a bit of everything in there, a bit of R&B, a bit of rock, a bit of hip hop if I could. So yeah, and at the same time, whenever I create, I always try to make something I don't know how to make. So if I've heard something before, that's usually what inspires me the most musically, is music I don't know how it's created. Anytime I don't know what they've done for the creative process, that's kind of what I'm drawn to. So with this one, this project, like all the other tracks, I try to make styles of music that I just didn't know how to make, or styles that weren't necessarily original, but unique in a way that the elements, the way they're put together, no one's really put them together like that before. I started with maybe trying to get 15 ideas and just doing one a week, and at the end choosing the best 5, because usually I only like 1 in 3 tracks that I make, so I really wanted the chance to just be creative as I wanted, like no rules. And then at the end you can decide what is the best, and I think it's easier that way because you're a lot more free when you write, when you're creating. Yeah, so it's very futuristic. What's funny is, as I said, going into the project, I didn't necessarily have 100% idea of what the EP was going to be, because each week was a new track, so the style would change from week to week. Influences would change from week to week, inspirations week to week. Also, life is continuing, so I'm drawn for that on a weekly basis. Yeah, but in the end, what's interesting is that there seemed to be this theme of futurism and sci-fi and love, or R&B, singer-songwriting style top line that you would probably hear. And at the same time, all the beats are hitting hard. So even there's a ballad on there, but it's produced like a dance track. I think I tried to make every track, no matter what genre or style it was, produced kind of like a dance track. Because for me, dance music and electronic music, the way the creative process is now is so technical, and the amount of how do I say this, creativity you can get from just tweaking the smallest of details, that appeals to me a lot, as opposed to more simpler styles of music. And another aspect of the style of EP is I wanted to get these kind of complex musical styles that you might hear in like future bass and these other crazy electronic genres, but bring it into a format that was like digestible by people that only listen to, maybe they're not musicians themselves, or maybe they're not following on latest trends. They might just hear what's given to them. So if that's like radio and TV adverts and stuff like that, I wanted to build the tracks in a way that they were digestible by those listeners, that audience. At the same time, I always wanted my music to be able to be on film soundtracks, TV adverts, radio, everywhere basically, as universal as possible. Yeah, so as I said, you can imagine I'm in here in my studio trying to get a track done in a week, and if the weekend has come and I'm behind, like I'm not going out on the weekend, I'm making sure this track is finished. So I'm not necessarily getting as much inspiration as I could from life if I'm just staying here writing and writing. So I kind of gravitated towards whatever I could find on the internet, like new music, different styles of music that I've never heard before, visual art, digital arts, anything from cinematography to like video games and their effects and stuff like that. And there was one Apple Watch advert that had this tune, and this tune hadn't been released yet, and it was only like maybe a 5-second clip. I wonder if I should play the advert as well. Why not? This thing's running, so this thing's here. Cool. And yeah, so that track wasn't even released yet. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, wow, like, I rarely hear something like that. So then, when it did get released, let's see this one more time. It's got that kind of Kanye power kind of vibe. You know, that element of rock. So yeah, like, and then straight into that dance drop But then, if you notice, like the beat always chops, like maybe every 4 beats, just a little something to keep you interested the whole time. I think that's what gets me about dance music the most. They're always trying to keep your interest from beginning to end. That's something that I love to do, and I think dance is probably the easiest format that I can do it in. If I try to do it in like a hip hop song or a ballad, like lots of chops and changes, it just breaks up the energy completely. Another big influence for this project was Flume. His sound, like his sound design is crazy, and the textures. Again, he kind of done it in a pop song format, if you will, and it's done in a way that people can, you know, digest it and gravitate towards it, instead of being too left, too different, you know, too weird. It's so mad. I've never done this. I think especially the chorus. I think it was more about listening to stuff that I just never listened to before. But like something like this, for example, this is from Breath of the Wild, like that new game that came out at the time that I was making this EP. And so as well as visually, I was taken from it musically. And then again, trying to put this into elements of it somehow into pop music. Crazy. Yeah, completely nuts. For this EP, I wanted to use it to help me kind of focus in on my own sound, as opposed to fitting in and jumping on whatever trends were out there already. So most of my favorite producers like Labyrinth, Raph Riley, Skrillex, Diplo, Timbaland, Pharrell Neptunes, I could go on. Their sound is very unique, but I think what contributes to that uniqueness is they're very much in tune with themselves. Like that whole period where Neptunes was dominating the charts, it didn't sound like anybody else. And they knew, even before that, as they were coming up, on some level they knew they didn't need to. And I can imagine like them playing their stuff to different people and then saying, oh, you know, this is just weird. It's so different. Like back in the day, like this is all I used to listen to. But now I'm kind of like, what is that, bro? Like it's so off kilter, like it's so different. Stands out like a sore thumb. But I can imagine at the time, people just like saying, no, we're like, I'm not gonna jump on that kind of thing. But they stuck to it, and then, you know, that's why they're as hot as they are. So for me, it was really diving into my influences and stuff like that, whether it was different kinds of, I mean, whatever artists were out there already, producers, singers, but also what I grew up with, whether that's video games, films and stuff like that. So going back and really trying to listen and find stuff that's unique to me. And I think by doing that, I've definitely made something that sounds like no one else would have made it, kind of thing. And that's what I wanted to do. Even before I made the first track, which I didn't intend to be part of this EP, or before I had the idea of an EP in general, I was kind of in a space where I didn't even want to create. Like I haven't made music for so long, so many years. Churning in the beginning, I think I had so many ideas, and I just jumped at any opportunity to try and get the idea out, like into software or whatever it was, or on the instrument. And then, yeah, so at that time I never really ran out of ideas. But this time, just before making the EP, when I first made Venus, the last track of the EP, I was in a space where I didn't want to create. Everything I was hearing, I was just like, I didn't feel it. Like, and throughout that time, I've listened to so much music, so many different styles, that I just became very picky in terms of what I thought was good, and like my standards were just increasing as I got better as a producer. My standards were increasing as a listener to what I was hearing. Like, it needed to hit me in a way where I'm like, yo, I need to go and try and make something. I need to like better than this. I need to top this. I was kind of looking at like other creative industries, films and video games, and how what's interesting about those industries is that although it's a business and it's about making money, the creative process is never ever, what's the word? Interrupted, if you will. I ain't even got a better word for that. And so if anything, at the core, in the beginning, if you look at something like Pixar or something like that, the core of it is all about getting the creativity down, the story. Like, I don't even think they put things into a script or recording until they finish storyboarding and getting the colors down of how each scene should be. And same with games. Unless things are fun and creative and you use your creativity to make something that's fun to play, all this marketing and stuff like that doesn't really matter. Whereas in the music industry, especially now, it's more like a fight for attention. So I needed to go somewhere else and look at types of art that was still very much focused about the creativity. So for example, I was looking at this. So one thing that got me about this game is the particle effects and how much detail is necessary to produce something, for example here, that looks like water. Like, all of this doesn't exist, but by using technology, you have to try and convince the player that all this stuff is going on. So I thought to myself, why doesn't music sound as good as this looks? Like, at the time, I was hearing really just boring ideas, like basic stuff where it's not necessarily like basic is bad, is that you're kind of getting away with as little as you can, when it doesn't need to be that way. I don't think the creative process would be stifled like that. And at the time, again, like I said, before I jumped in the creative process for this project, I just really started to think about what makes music good and trying to find the parallels between what makes visual art good or what makes literature good. You know, you can always break down the elements. And so if you took visual art, for example, you'd have a lot of thinking about shapes, color, foreground and background, shading, texture, all these things. And it's the same in music. It's all there, whether you think about it or not. You're actually doing it as you create. But I really wanted this to be in the front of my mind as I was making the music. And I think that's what allowed me to approach sound design for this project in the way that I did. For example there, all of these particle effects, animation. So again, with the parallels between two different arts, whether it's like music and games. If I'm playing a game, it needs to be interesting. I need to be hooked in. If I'm listening to a song, I need to be hooked from the beginning to the end. And as I've said, if you've heard or if you've seen a lot of interesting things, anytime you're given something that is less than what it could be, you're going to question why isn't this as good as that one was? You know, why is this? There's a lot of elements missing here that was in the other one that I really liked. And I feel like, again, if you only listen to music, I guess, on the radio or adverts, YouTube, blogs, streaming, you're kind of only listening to what's given to you. Whereas someone that is a big fan of music, maybe you're a music journalist, music blogger, music creative yourself, you're always looking for these things, and you kind of understand from listening to loads of kinds of music what really creative elements would be in certain songs. So with this project, I want to make sure that if you're just an average listener, you're able to, I guess, absorb all of these things as well. I think I went to the cinema during the time of this EP. But yeah, something like this scene. Like, I mean, I'm the type of person that sees this. I went home and started researching, you know, how is this done in terms of cinematography? And I spoke to my friend who does sculpting and animation. And he's saying there's like so many different layers of types of visual art design that creates this. I was like, okay, wow. Again, like, if I'm listening to music, it needs to sound as good as this looks. This looks crazy. It's kind of like a future bass track, but it's a bit more soft in some places, I guess. Like, nice guitar progression that a singer could write to, sing something. romantic over, I guess, who knows, some kind of love song, relationship thing. But then you got the hardness of the drop. And so on. I think one of the hardest things about this track, the most difficult, was to have, like I said earlier, all these interesting elements coming in and out and keeping it like somewhat familiar to your ear and still not overcrowding it with too many elements going on. But for example, when I was talking about looking at other styles of art, anything visual, or I guess more so digital art and animation and stuff like that, where you kind of have the actual space that everything's going to be in, whether it's a room or anything like that, and then loads of different elements. But again, elements have their own shape, their own color, texture, brightness. For example, if you're animating and you need to let someone know that it's something supposed to look like fire or something like that, you know exactly what kind of textures you need. Whether it's like this wavy flame thing, you know exactly what colors you need. And I think I tried to bring that into the sound design of this project. So for a lot of these tracks, I made the sounds myself. I wonder if I can get some of these, for example. This is a very good one. So that's something that's, you know, it's bright as hell and it's in the distance, but as it's played, it's not a single bar, single note or whatever it is. It moves and it wobbles through the, as it's played. I'm gonna see what else we got in there. That's another one. So if you listen to the intro, or say the first verse, you got this big empty space with kind of just these bright things coming in and out. And I think one of the reasons I like writing like this is because it's so unpredictable. Until you hear the first chorus and then the structure repeats again, you don't know what you're going to get. And a lot of my favorite producers or favorite songs, favorite artists, they do that kind of thing. Anything else where I can predict the whole song from the first 30 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever it is, I'm bored already. I know exactly what's going to come. The structure. If I can guess the structure, imagine you're watching a film or you're reading a book. If you can guess the story, what's the point? That kind of progression. I guess with that, I wanted something that was kind of like, I don't know, somewhere in between happy and sad at the same time. But I definitely wanted those guitars to be as far away as possible, somewhere distant. And then for the drop, we just bring everything back in to the center. So yeah, I think this was actually the 6th project out of 15. So it took me a while to actually get to this one. This was 6 weeks in. An R&B tune that was influenced by trap with the drums, but overall it was a pop song. And then give you exactly what you want in kind of this bridge. So we got this. and so on. And in the beginning, this sounds very interesting. I try to get sounds that even by themselves, they're always moving or they're always animated. Because I try to imagine, again, if it was a visual thing and you're in a room or a box or something like that, you'd have some elements that stay the same and don't ever change. That lets you know, where you are, what's going on. The floor's not supposed to be moving, yeah? Something like that. But then you always have these elements that are, I don't know, flying around. Like, even that by itself is kind of interesting. It's kind of like, what is that? Where is that? Something like this, really off in the distance. But again, it's moving and animating by itself. It's like 2 sounds in one effect. With that kind of siren thing in the background. So you got that pop song on top with the melodies and stuff like that, but then underneath you got this kind of and then almost halfway through we've got this kind of bridge section. And I always love to create, again, something different, because for me, if I hear that from the beginning, I kind of know how the track is going to go until the very end. So I always like to keep listeners on their toes. So here we got this kind of sci-fi pad coming in, just out of nowhere. Then all of a sudden it just gets more gritty, like the pop song is kind of moved to the background. Cool. This track, I think this was the first track I created, and I created it a long time before I even thought about doing an instrumental EP. With this, I guess this started off the whole sci-fi kind of aspect to the EP, because I got this really distant guitar going on in the background. So this track is definitely a ballad. It's probably the slowest and softest out of all of them. But again, as I said earlier, I kind of tried to produce it like a dance track just to get that other element in there. I'm always trying to flip something, flip it, turn it, flip it until it's done. And so for this one, I sampled a classical piece by Schubert. I took the harmony and kind of the way the chords are arranged, and so here we got this ballad. And it moves. But then I throw in that kind of, not that sound. Something you might hear in a dance track somewhere. Went together. So it's soft and it flows, but it bounces at the same time. And I do that further when the drums come in. So yeah, I think the background behind this track is like you're falling deeper and deeper into something, whether it's a relationship or whatever. But that was the aspect, creating something that was big, far away, And then again, as I said, you got your typical structure, but then for this bridge, I wanted to bring in something a little different. Like we flipped the whole chord progression, so the harmonies changed. Now we got this. And I think studying music for a long time and looking at music in different ways has given me access to do many different things. But for me, while creating these tracks, it was about which creative decisions were the right decisions to do. So we've still got this space guitar. But now with these live guitars. Yeah, so this track, I think I made this break section, or pre-chorus first. I don't know how, but I knew I wanted it in there, I guess. Maybe I had this kick drum first, actually, by itself, whatever. And then before I even had a verse or chorus, I knew I wanted this kind of transition. And then into the chorus. Like something like this, I guess, with the opera singer. You don't hear this a lot, but I knew immediately if I was going into something kind of familiar or predictable, something comfortable, I wanted something uncomfortable just before it. Again, with this track, I definitely envisioned some kind of club aspect to it. And again, you can hear I'm thinking about the sound design choices. It's just things that move. And here I've got this crazy squelch synth again, something that's animated a bit off in the distance. Trying to create that space of background, foreground. And again, the drum pattern, the original drum pattern was nothing like this. It was awful. But then I just kept trying, and I found this. And this kind of drum pattern, I don't think I've made something like this before. But I knew it had the right groove, so I just kept it. It's like right in the middle between something that's rock, funk, hip-hop-ish. Anything else in here? I don't think so, really. What's this? Yeah, so what's interesting, I wanted that kind of club aspect, but I also wanted this kind of end credits feel, like the end of a film or something like that. Something that sounds like it would have been composed or orchestrated or something like that. Definitely sounds like an ending to something. But then from that, we're going straight into Fall to the Floor. Pop thing. So yeah, this poster, again, I was in the studio every day, so I just needed to find inspiration. Obviously, I saw this film, sick film, it's decent. But this poster, like the depth in it, I think me studying how visual artists create what they want to create and trying to bring that to the music definitely influenced this track here. So from the beginning, you can see like this landscape just goes on forever. It's big distance. So in a way, I wanted to start the track with something that was big and far away at the same time. And then just explodes into the verse. But again, with those chords, those piano chords, it's kind of emotional because you see some kind of emotion that's going on here. And when you've been in the studio just every single day and you ain't got ideas, I think this is one of the best things to do. Yes, that's the one there. So again, going back to that animation, spacey, sci-fi kind of feel. Them kind of was they are. This was made before I started actually creating the EP. I mean, from when I made this, I knew it was like probably the best one of all of them. And I made this track coming off the back of not really wanting to create anything, not being inspired. But then, you know, I did get inspired. And I just sat down with this and just started to experiment. What did I start with? I knew I wanted this drum pattern that was just like, something that was swinging just like that. And I started with the drums, but then I thought to myself, at this time I needed to get access to sounds that, you know, I don't have access to. The only way to do that is through samples, so I went and got this. Where are we? This one. And then it just started to come together really. So after those drums and that pattern, that was all sounding good, but I needed these chords that were just emotional, like, and I made them on the piano. You know, if you hear them on the piano, it's emotional. But I knew I didn't want the piano sound. I needed something else. So I went and found the sound that I made maybe at least 2 years before I actually made this track. Let's go through sounds. It's going to be the best one. And that's something about this. That was just crazy. To me, it sounds like Ibiza in space or something like that. I can imagine a party island, but it's not from here. It's definitely not from this planet, man. So here we have. And again, I made that from scratch from this. Literally just that beep. And I think this was a period where I was trying to make a new sound every single day, just to build on my library and get better at sound designing, really. And so anyone that understands FM synthesis kind of knows what's going on here. So then when you add those chords, and so yeah, that goes back to, again, creating something that's very visual, animated, like if it was in a film, if it was in an animation, if it was in a video game, you know, what would it look like, and trying to get that through the sound. This was probably one of the few tracks where I had the concept of what I wanted. It was kind of like a very exaggerated idea of love at first sight. Like, you see someone, but you haven't even spoken to them yet, and you just start hallucinating and dreaming of all the possibilities, things that can actually happen. But nothing's actually happened. You're just in your own world.